It is mid-October and the start of year 3 of my doing Stewart for Liberty videos. Welcome if this is your first one. I spent pretty much all the videos from years 1 and 2, starting October of 17, on state issues. But Connecticut is going to run itself, well or not so well, for the next couple years without outside influence. Where might I have influence? It is national. So I will be dedicating most of these to national prescription. Fix ourselves. I target this first video at one columnist who I have high esteem for, but in this case he's wrong. It's Times is Nichalas Kristof. And he's commenting about a study, a valuable one, from 2 Berkeley professors about wealth discrepancies and the taxes they pay. The 400 richest families having ultimately a lower tax rate than even the lowest 20% of families. But remember, tax rate is not the same as taxed amount. Those 400 families pay an awful lot. And this goes to the absurdity of using the income tax in the first place. The income tax has never been a fair way to raise revenue. And maybe Mr. Kristof and this article's publicity, maybe it'll highlight the absurdity of keeping an income tax code. We foisted it upon ourselves 100 and some years ago to raise revenue for progressive things that the government really didn't have any business doing in the first place. It wasn't constitutional, but there was progressive sentiment. And how are you going to fund good government? Well, here's another way. And back in the teens, the 19 teens, it was a very small sliver of the public that was subject to an income tax, and it capped out at 6%. It was not very high, and it was literally for only about 4% of the earning population. Now it affects 75% of us in a huge chunk for most. The most is the big question, because here's the absurdity. The not so well off people think they pay too large of a share. The very well off people think they pay too large of a share. Because it's inscrutable, tax actual forms are not made public unless you want to, we'll never know. The whole system of income taxation is rife with unfairness. If you're a business owner, things are too easy to bury. You know, I've met people who say, I can write off anything I want. Too much work for everybody. Too intrusive on anybody who has stuff that they'd like to keep private. And ultimately, not fair. Nobody pays the exact same amount of the government services that they use. And I think that should be the standard. What you use of government. And thus, the fairest tax is a use tax. Pay for what you use of government. Now, there's probably going to be a demarcation based on the collective use, like our defense budget needs to be paid for, and the United States military defends all of us. So there's going to be some per person, or maybe it should be per property defense. I think a combination is realistic. That's why I'm okay with a property tax if you get rid of the income tax. To some extent, a use tax is progressive. If you own a boat, you're going to pay a high share of the harbor master's fees, the dredging costs, the Coast Guard monitoring fees to keep boaters like you safe. If you use a private jet, you're going to be paying probably the majority of air traffic control use, because there's more private jets flying than public 747s, 737s combined. So there is a progressiveness that is fair, I'll use the F word, because it's based on the use of services, not based on your status. I've never been a fan of aid or taxation based on somebody's status, not elderly. Elderly doesn't give an inherent advantage or disadvantage. Fact, the average 85-year-old is far more wealthy than the average 35-year-old. Veteran, give you more benefit or less taxation? I don't think so either, okay? Veterans took a job with some very good pay and benefits at the time. They might have had a tremendously easy service, and 20 years later, they got a nifty pension and they can go on to a new career. Another veteran might have had both of his legs blown off on a landmine in Iraq. The status of veteran, I don't think, should be determinative. I do believe that aiding somebody who had that horrible casualty from veteran service, that's not status, that's his condition. And I do think that probably deserves welfare. Private first, but government where needed. Now, Mr. Kristof would like to see a more progressive tax code, income tax code. Right now, if you used uses, the government pays more to poor people than wealthy people. The government certainly pays more to have children taken care of and healthy and schooled. Shouldn't use be the factor? If I had to choose taxes on the lowest of pecking orders, I'd accept an income tax for non-citizens. I might accept temporarily a continued corporate income tax, okay? Don't run the accountants out of business. Corporations, they're used to playing games and they haven't put up a big enough fight, so let them stick with it for another decade. A corporate wealth tax, maybe. Corporate use tax, maybe. Personal property tax, maybe. Personal use tax, I kind of like. And actually, my favorite is a lottery, which is a form of use tax, but it's fun. It's voluntary, and you know you're giving up money that's probably not going to come back to you in spades, but you take your chances with every ticket. You support the government. It's pretty clear that 30 cents, maybe 35 cents of every dollar is going to support a state or federal government. Federal lottery, fine with me. The tax code we've been stuck with. The underpinnings of a progressive tax are, I think, a combination of ability to pay, we can get more from those people, and what I call forced gratitude. They should be happier because they're wealthier and living in a place that has helped get them wealthy. Well, whether it's the place that's helped get you wealthy or your own initiative is a big distinction, and I think it goes along with the progressive versus the conservative mindset. Obama will say, you didn't build that. The conservative will say, largely I did, and to the extent that government helped, it's maybe not even doing the proper job. It should just stay out. I have a bigger criticism for Nichalas Kristof, comes from the same article. I'll hit on that next. I'm Mark Stewart. Thank you for being on board.